Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Directors agenda meeting for November 7th, 2016. We are waiting to see if we get a couple more board members here, which I understand are on their way, so that we can take care of the recess meeting. But in the intervening time between then and now and then, we're going to go ahead with our agenda. Board members, if you've got that in front of you. The first is a presentation on the City Beautiful Commission Landscape Awards. So let me go ahead and welcome representatives from our City Beautiful Commission for this recognition.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Board of Directors. Again, we thank you for allowing us to present 2016 Annual Landscape Awards. This is our 37th consecutive year doing this, and we're very proud of it. Let me give you a little brief, for the crowd, a brief explanation of the awards. They're nominated developments that must be in place 1 year and have demonstrated excellent design, implementation, and continual maintenance, including voluntary upgrades, enhancements that have gone beyond the city's requirements. Previous winners are not eligible to win for another 5 years. The awards, they involve commercial, institutional, multifamily, subdivisions, or development projects within the City of Roses. With no further ado, let me present the first one, and these are not first place and second place awards. They're all equal awards. From Ward 4, Director Kazort, FIS, which is at 4001 North Rodney Parham, corner of 430 and Highway 10. Linda Blair is the recipient. There's some pictures here that we're showing of the project. Very nicely designed, implemented, and maintained. Very deserving of this reward. And if I can ask Linda to come up here.
Oh, certainly.
Are you, and the landscaper, yep, and say a few words.
Well, we're just so excited to be recognized for this, and this is Greg Curtis with the Good Earth, and the Good Earth has been doing our grounds for
12 years probably.
At least a minimum of 12 years, and so they do a great job, and it's just a really scenic area. The courtyard is beautiful with all the flowers and trees, and so we're just very honored to be recognized.
Thank you. We have a plaque here for you.
Great. We
have a yard sign that you can take on your way out to put on your property.
Great.
If we can get right over here and get a picture taken.
Oh, certainly.
Chris, you want to go back? Oh, you want to get a picture?
We'll share these with you. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Great. Thank you. Okay, the next award, and Mayor, if I can ask you to come down and receive this one for the city, it's the Little Rock Creative Corridor between the 300 and 600 block of Main Street, and that's Ward 1, Director Hendricks.
Oh, it's your award.
We'll get everybody up here.
I saw you made it.
For those who are watching, the city's proud to have received a landscape award from the City of Little Rock Beautiful Commission. It's a collective effort between a lot of different departments, from the mayor's office to the city manager's office, and the Parks and Recreation Department are vested now with the responsibility for maintenance of the creative corridor, and certainly our grants division and all sorts of folks were very, very helpful. Our Public Works Department, of course, in installing the landscaping and the nature of really transforming Main Street into an area that everybody is proud of and is very, very attractive. And at the same time, it's helping to preserve the environment and the water quality of the hardscape of water that hits all that asphalt and pavement every time it rains. So we're very happy and thankful for it. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, the third and final presentation is Panera Bread, 10701 Canis Road, right off the corner of Canis and Shackleford. And Lance Brown, if you'll come up and receive the award for Panera. Or say a few words first, please.
Thank you very much, everybody. We're just ultra excited. When we first moved here, we had big plans, and we plan to continue to grow in the city of Little Rock. We're just so grateful and thankful. And I don't have my landscapers with me, but I'm sure that once they understand and know, they're going to be ultra excited. And we are just so grateful that to be in the city of Little Rock, first of all. And we just thank you very much for this award and the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For you. No. Director Wright, did you want to say something?
I just want to let everyone know that Panera, this particular store is in Ward 6 with Central Little Rock.
I forgot to mention you, I'm sorry.
I just had to remind you. You have to ask me twice.
Right here. All right, be great. Perfect. Thanks, guys. Okay, we have 3 yard signs over here. 2 of them are tall, one of them short. I don't know how that happened, but whichever one you could use the best, grab it
All right, thank
on your
you.
way out. Thank you for allowing us to do the awards.
Steve, do you want to
again.
introduce the rest of the people that you have with you from our City Beautiful
We
Commission?
have Commissioner Ed Peak, Chris Morgan, another commissioner, actually Ed's our chairman, and Hancock, I'm sorry. We had 2 Chris's.
Well, very good. Thank you for your service to the city. It's great to have a commission that recognizes the beauty of our city, and we appreciate very much what you do every year. This being the 37th one, you've been around for a long time, and we'll be around for a lot longer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we can go ahead and work on that consent agenda. Board members, if you will, we've got items 1 through 11. Let me ask you to look at those and see if anybody has any questions on it. Director Adcock.
I do too.
I have questions on 6, 8, 9, 10, and 11.
Okay. Mr. Moore?
Yes, ma'am. Item 6. This is our annual certification of city liens to the county. Once this is done, it then goes on the property owner's property tax bill.
Okay. What is the amount of the total of these liens?
It's $114,151.75. It's right there on the synopsis there.
Okay. I'm sorry, but the taxpayers out there don't have a synopsis.
Yes, they did. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What length of time are these liens from?
Let me ask Mr. Garland to come forward.
Mayor, members of the board, Director Adcock, that's going to be from January 1 through November 2016.
Do you know how much total we've filed liens on property in the last, I think we've done this about 5 years?
I would have to double check, Director Adcock, but I know at least 3. Generally, we'll average around this $114,000.
Okay. Mr. Moore, do we have any idea how much of this we're collecting?
Director Adcock, as of 2015, we were tracking about 14% of what we certify. But that continues throughout the year.
14%?
As of November 2016, for the liens we certified, November 2015, we've collected about 14% of that, I'm sorry.
What type of collection do you do before it goes to the county?
Well, we'll normally send the owners an invoice and then notification that we intend to file a lien. Excuse me, and we'll follow that up with another notification that we're going to be presenting them to the board for certification, and they have an opportunity to call and meet with staff.
Do we collect any during that time?
We do. We have quite a few that will call prior to certification to the state, as well as once we have filed those liens. Once they get the letter that we're now going to certify, they start calling staff.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Director Wright, I'm sorry, go ahead. I guess Director
Mine was on 11.
Adcock had, let's see, 9, 10, and 11.
8, 9, 10, 11.
8, 9, 10, 11, okay.
Mr. Howard?
Mr. Howe, I noticed that we added a new Chodo this year.
Yes,
And can you tell me who it is and,
it's in affordable housing.
okay, and they're building houses now?
Yes,
Okay, and they're now Chodo. Each one of these got $400,000 to build 3 houses.
yes, except BCD, Better Community Development. They're going to build 4 houses.
The other's gonna build 3 houses?
Yes,
3 houses for $400,000. That's about $125,000 a house to build. And that doesn't include property because we already own the property, correct?
well, under the RFP, we require that they have one property that they will develop from the land bank. So the other 2 properties that they can have on their own.
At this time, how many houses do we have for sale? Low Rock houses that we own?
Under NSP2, we have 3 left, and under home, we have 1.
We have 4 houses, and how long have those houses been empty?
Probably less than a year.
All 4 of them, less than a year?
Yes.
And how much money are we getting back each year? I know last year we spent about the same amount. So how much are we getting back that then is going into more housing?
We're getting around 85 to 90% back of the money that we put out.
Okay, so with that money coming back, is it going into building new housing too?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so with that money, how many houses are we going to build this year? Now, this is 6, this is 10 houses.
Yes, ma'am.
So how many are we going to build with the money that we've gotten paid back?
We'll build additional 4 houses with the program income that we receive. So we'll have a total of 14 houses that we'll develop.
Okay. I would like to have a list of where each one of those houses that's going to be built this year are located,
Yes, ma'am.
please. Thank you.
Director
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Wright, did you have a question about those?
I mean, on number 11, I know some of these develop only in certain areas, in specific areas, and I'm trying to see if any of these new homes will be developed in West Central Little Rock.
Yes, ma'am. 2 of the houses will be built in West Little Rock. In affordable housing, yes, West Central. In affordable housing, it's going to do.
Difference. Bruce is smiling, I was just saying, I don't want people, the audience, to think, oh, they building brand-new homes out in West Little Rock. This is West Central Little Rock.
Yes, ma'am. In affordable housing, it's going to do one at 1501 East Twin Lakes Drive.
Okay?
And the other one will be done on Cobb Street. I don't have the exact address, but it's close to that area we talked about previously.
Okay, good. See, they listen. I like, they listen, Bruce. Thank you.
Yes. Anything else?
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
Could you tell me, would you have access?
Director Hendricks, can you pull your microphone up, please?
Thank you. Would you share with me, not today, but send to me the persons who have shotos?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All All right, any other questions on items 1 through 11? All right, if we can, let's move then to the planning and development items, 12 through 14. And let me ask if there's any requests for any presentations on any of these three items. Director Adcock would like item 12, please, Mr. Moore.
A presentation, please.
Mr. Brzezinski.
Binsky, while I'm thinking of it, I would like for everyone to go by and look at the houses that Flanders Smith is putting on Chester Street. They all look very nice. They're doing a great job of it.
Joan, would you pull your microphone? Nobody can hear you,
There
I
it
don't
is.
think.
Okay. I would like for everyone to go to the houses over on Chester Street that Flanders Smith is building because they look very nice. But now I have questions about 12, if you would do a presentation on that, please.
Director Adcock, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. Item 12 is property located at 6400 Lancaster, which is north of 65th Street. The request before you is to rezone the property from R2 single family to planned commercial development to allow the site to be developed for student housing, dormitory style, that would be serving the Washington Barber College, which is the second building to the west of Lancaster that fronts on West 65th Street. This item was heard by the Planning Commission at their September 22nd meeting. There was some opposition present after hearing comments from the applicant and those in opposition. The Planning Commission voted 9 ayes and 1 no to recommend approval of the proposed plan development to the Board of Directors. Staff is also recommending approval of the proposal. And again, this is will house students that are enrolled at the Barber College, those students only. And then another aspect, they possibly will have a daycare, again, to serve the students of the Barber College, nobody else. And that's the site plan in front of you. They'll be utilizing shipping containers for this development. There'll be a total of 9 containers that will be used for the dormitories. Those are the ones in kind of the darker yellow. And then the red to the north or closer to Lancaster, those will be for office use and security. And then the 3 towards the rear of the property will be for the cafeteria and that type of space.
I know that the neighborhood and Southwest Ups both voted to oppose this. One of the reasons, the parking, they was told that there would not be parking on this site, that they would have to park at the Barber's College if they have automobiles.
Director Adcock, the site plan in front of you does have some parking associated with this part of the development. And then again, because these students will be at the Barber College, they'll be utilizing the parking that's already in place on that site. So we've had, I think they're over with the 9 spaces here, there's approximately 60 spaces on the property where the Barber College is.
I'll have to go back and count them because I haven't counted that many up there. Is that inside that fenced area?
Yes.
Okay. Mayor, I'd like for this to be kept separate, please.
Very good. We'll keep that separately. Tony, other than this schematic, have you seen a design of what these storage containers are supposed to look like?
Mayor, at the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant, I think, had some renderings. I can't tell you for sure, but we've seen some. And
Well, I mean, a storage container, we have had a couple of conversions, and they have done substantial work to the outside in terms of the appearance of them, and I'm just curious whether or not there's been some detail given to staff on what these might look like once complete?
I'll have to go back and check and see what we have in the file, but at the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant indicated they would, they're just not going to take storage units and plop them on the property. They're going to upgrade them and paint them and things like that.
Well, yeah, I understand, but the pitch of the roof, or if there is a roof, and there's a variety of things in terms of how it might complement or not complement the adjacent neighborhood that I'm, and is there any, was there any discussion about, I was a little curious that the Barber College needed student housing. Was there any discussion about how long this Barber, how long a person is in Barber College to determine those kinds of things?
No, what the applicant indicated that there are a number of students that come from out of town, and he felt that this would be utilized by those students to provide them housing on site instead of having to commute. But in terms of how long they're in the program, no, I don't think that was mentioned.
Okay, thank
I
you.
have another question.
Go ahead, Director Adcock.
Tony, there are 2 or 3 apartment complexes within probably 50 feet of this
Something else?
facility, and they're not full. I do not understand why a Barber College would feel like that they have to have student housing, because as the mayor said, you usually don't think of people going long-term to Barber College.
That question was, I think, posed to the applicant, and I think part of it is they pay tuition, and the student housing would be included in their tuition.
Also, on some of these 2-story, one on top of the other?
The proposed housing units would be, they'd be 3 of them would be stacked.
Mayor, they're going to be stacked 3 high.
Pardon?
The container is going to be stacked 3 high. I just don't see how that's going to look like anything for 65th Street in that neighborhood.
Well, Director Adcock, I mean, this, if you look at 65th Street, if we can go to the area zoning, I mean, to the west, directly west of this property is a light industrial use. And then further to the west is another, it's PDI, that's an industrial use. So this area, it's a mix of commercial and industrial, different types of architectural styles.
If you go out there, those industrial that you're pointing out, they have spent lots of money on their landscaping and to make their facilities look very nice. And this goes back into a neighborhood. This neighborhood on Lancaster will have to drive by these containers stacked 3 high to get to their homes and everything. So although they are industrial, those businesses have really gone out of their way to make them look nice to the neighborhood. It doesn't look like something that is industrial. It looks very nice, particularly the new 2 that have been located there. And I just can't see how 3 containers high is going to add to a single-family neighborhood.
Well, they will have to landscape, and a lot of the site is set aside as open area. And
Hard to landscape straight up, Tony.
Pardon?
It's hard to landscape straight up.
Tall trees?
It'd take a few years for a tall tree 3 stories high. Thank you.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know what they're doing. All right, more comments from directors on this item only, please. Director Wright?
Tony, I follow housing trends pretty closely, and this is one that is gaining a lot of momentum across the country. However, they put money into the exterior of these things to make them look compatible with the surrounding area. They're never going to blend in. That's for certain. So there's nothing they can do that's going to really change the shape, but they look ultra modern and they look kind of hip when you do it right. But I just need to see what they're proposing, because these are small, and I've seen them thoroughly renovated, and they're usually, the most you can get out of one is a small kitchen and 1 bedroom. So it sounds like you're talking like a barracks type thing. So I'd really like to see the design and the layout for the structure of how it's going to be developed into this type of housing. I mean, I want to be supportive, but at this point, I don't have enough information,
It-
and that the appearance of them is very, very important. Mr. Moore?
And Mayor, I was just going to say, it's been a while. It was this year, though, probably in the spring or summer, that the architect and the owner of the Barber College came over and presented to me and Mr. Brzezinski and the staff. So I think they will have renderings. He's engaged an architect. They've looked at, as you said, across the country that there's a trend, and they want it to be complementary to the neighborhood, and I think that's what the renderings will show next Tuesday.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
On this issue, Director Wyrick? Go ahead, Director Wyrick.
Okay, most of my questions have been answered. A couple of concerns. They came and did a presentation to Southwest United for Progress, and we asked them to talk to the neighborhood in and around this area, and I'm not sure that they did. So I'm not sure this neighborhood has been apprised of this sort of development. I think I read some of the reports from the Planning Commission, and the person that said it was concerned this was going to look like a train wreck. In other words, lots of containers and ran together, and so that speaks volumes to what everybody else has already said. We'd like to see what this is going to look like. The question I had is, it looked like the containers were 40 feet long. I don't know what the width is, but it looked like they were taking the containers and they were going to put 2 bedrooms in each one. Is that your understanding, Tony, of how they're going to do this? And if so, does that meet our standards for living, so many people living in a certain square footage? Does that meet our standards for our ordinances in Little Rock?
I don't have those numbers.
Well, one would have thought that before you gave your approval, you would know whether it met or not.
But I don't know if it applies to dormitory type housing. That's what I need to check on. They're proposing 24 beds in 12 storage
Right.
containers.
So that sounds like two bedrooms or 2 people to live in each one of those containers. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. Is that what you heard?
I don't recall the specifics about each container, other than the sketch says that they'll have obviously bathroom, storage, and work-study areas.
Okay. Well, that would be something I would be concerned about. Does it match what our ordinances say? And you're calling this a dormitory type situation, and I'm not sure what the square footage would be for that, but I'd like to know what that is. And then also, I don't believe we had any renderings of what it looked like when they met with us at Southwest, but they have not met with the neighborhood. The neighborhood, we asked them to specifically go to one of their neighborhood meetings and talk with them about this development coming. So that's kind of a sticky widget with me. Thank you.
Okay, Director Campuris, you're next, please.
This is on a different subject.
Yeah, we're done with this subject.
Bruce, sometime going back to the programs of the building programs we went over, Joan talked about on 8, 9, and 10. Could you give us just, and not a whole lot of time, but a history of how well we've done on that occupancy and that sort of thing to see how well this program's doing?
Director Wright, you're next, please.
Tony, on item 14, I wanted to know if there was any opposition to these. This is another duplex.
Director Wright, at the Planning Commission meeting, there was an individual that spoke in opposition to the proposed rezoning to R4.
What was the opposition? Do you know what their opposition was related to?
She made the lots are currently wooded. She would prefer that they remain wooded, but they're 2 platted lots, so you could build a single family on each one. And I think concern about the duplexes in the area.
Okay. I have not heard from anyone, but there are a lot of these being constructed in this area. And I spoke with Mr. Moore before about this area. A lot of this was on substandard infrastructure, so it's not like somebody's going to go and get a loan to build a house there. So hopefully they'll come and make their opposition known to us. But thank you.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
Tony, while you're there, could you give me the address of item 13?
Director Hendricks, item 13 is located at 614 President Clinton Avenue.
Thank you.
It's in the River Market area.
Okay, we can now move on to separate items 15 through 18. And let me ask if there's any questions on any of those three items, please. Pardon? Director Adcock would like a presentation on item 17, please.
Mayor, members of the board, as we do throughout the year, sometimes we have to do multiple budget adjustments, but we do at least one annual budget adjustment. This is to reflect where we feel like we're going to end the year from a revenue and an expenditure standpoint. As noted in the documents, we are down from a sales tax perspective and from a franchise fee perspective. We have, I think, done a good job in holding down our expenditures, but because of the revenue projections at the beginning, or actually last year, these are the budget adjustments that we're having to make so we could end the year with a balanced budget. So I'll ask Sarah to come up and go through the actual details of the 8 adjustments, but this is our annual budget adjustment
And when
being
will
presented.
we see the budget for 2017?
A lot of there's a lot of work that's going into it. There are 5 Tuesdays in November, and I'm hoping for that the 4th Tuesday, which would be around the 22nd. But we're still working hard with. We just got the insurance numbers plugged in. We're still looking at revenue. I mean, as you all know, that drives a lot of what we end up bringing forward.
Okay.
There.
Scott, if you could bring up the board communication. The fiscal impact section here is just a summary of all the adjustments, so I'll go on into the detail, but overall, the revenues in the general fund, we expect a decline in our original estimates of a little over $3 million. There's an increase in number 2 of $545,000, and that's associated with turnback funds. And I think really it'll be easier to speak from this if I go on and go into the details. So if we move to the first item in background, these are the revenue adjustments that we're proposing. In the property tax number, it will be a decrease of $111,000. Our property tax revenues are actually up a little bit because of the commission turnback that was included in 2016 revenue that normally would have been recognized in 2015, but we received it late. But it's offset by a couple of things. Our Act 9 revenues are included. They're grouped with property taxes in our report. In the past, those have always been deposited to the general fund. We made the decision that we really should be following the property tax millage. So, for example, if a portion of that millage is attributed to library bonds, then that piece of the Act 9 revenue should go towards those library bonds. Same with our street and drainage improvement bonds, our police and fire pension levies, so we're just following the property tax levies with our Act 9 revenues. So that's going to decrease our Act 9 revenue by, in the general fund, by about 300,000 or so. Also, we had some property tax revenues that were dedicated to the port that we have directed to a fund for the benefit of roads in the port. So combined, that's going to reduce our property tax revenue. Our sales tax revenue, this trues us up to what we have collected through October for our August sales tax, and then it reduces our prospective growth rate to 0.5% for the remainder of the year. The next line item, licenses and permits, this is an increase to recognize the fact that we have done better than anticipated on collection of our business licenses, also the licenses on mixed drink sales, and then on our planning permits. We've had some commercial permits that weren't anticipated that have driven that up, so that's an increase. Our franchise fees, this is primarily the decrease in both our electric and our gas franchise fees. We've been talking about these all year in our monthly report, and I'll be going over them again tonight when we do our August report. But this just recognizes the decreases that we've seen in the current year in both of those areas. Our intergovernmental revenue, this is the pension turnback funds that we receive in July from the state. This is the portion that the general fund gets to retain, and the objective there is to, the turnback is supposed to approach approximately 40% of the contribution that we make for the police and fire lot fee contributions. So that's an increase. Charges for services, the zoo revenues have increased this year. You'll recall last year we had significant rainfall. We had to adjust those down. We were conservative in our forecast this year, not knowing what the weather would do. They've experienced much better revenues this year, and so we're moving that number up. War Memorial Golf was closed for 3 months this year while we were resurfacing or doing the new greens, resurfacing the greens, and so we're recognizing the fact that while they were closed for 3 months, we had a decline in that revenue. Same with with our false alarm revenue, we've had an increase of $198,000. Our fines and fees, we have a decrease in our fine revenues that we're recognizing. So all in all, it's a $3 million decrease in our revenues. The second adjustment is to adjust for the turnback funds that we receive that pass through to the police and fire pension fund. So this is an increase to the revenue, but it's also an increase to the expense in the exact same amount. So these are revenues that are dedicated to the police and fire pension funds. We received those in the turnback in July, and they are passed through, so the pension contribution expense increases by the same amount. There's no net impact to the budget. The third amendment is to adjust our expenditures, and so we're going to, based on the actual vacation and sick payouts that we've had for employees that are retiring or severing employment with the city, we've had payouts above the $1 million that we had accrued for that, and so we are estimating an additional $350,000 will be needed for those payouts. We are also increasing our vacancy savings allowance. We started the year with a budget of $6 million. We have been exceeding that pace, and we anticipate that our vacancy savings will be in the neighborhood of $7,250,000, so we're increasing that. The district judges' payout. Our district judges, based on legislation that was passed at the state, they become state employees at the first of the year. One of the things that we have to do, since they will be moving to state employees, is we have to pay out their vacation and PTO time that they've accrued, since they will no longer be city employees. So we've estimated that amount's going to be $237,000, and that has to be done by the end of December. The fuel cost reduction recognizes just the reduction in fuel prices that we've seen all year long, and so the fleet department is passing some of that fuel savings on, to the departments. They're not paying as much for fuel, and so we're reducing their budgets to help offset some of those revenue reductions. Police safety equipment, there was a resolution that you all passed a couple of meetings ago, and there was just a small portion of that the general fund had to contribute. Most of those funds were paid for with dedicated police funds from other sources, and so this finishes the cost of the bulletproof vests. $55,000 is an increase that First T had requested in funding in order to meet their payroll obligations, I think, for the remaining of the year. And then we will be utilizing our $1 million contingency allocation that we set aside at the first of the year in order to help offset our declines in revenues. You'll recall that our ordinances require that we set aside at least 0.5% of our general fund revenue budget for contingency. The hope, of course, is that we won't need to use that and that we'd be able to increase our restricted reserve. But the purpose of it is that if you do have revenue fluctuations, you have some capacity to help offset that, and so we will be using that. So the decrease in our general fund revenues, in our expenditures, will be $2,173,956. The next item, item 4, is this is just a transfer. Our 311 operations, we moved. There were people in the police department that handled that and people in the waste disposal fund that handled that. That division has been transferred to the general government division. So we're moving the remainder of that budget from the police department for the personnel that moved from the police department and from the waste disposal fund for the people that moved from the waste disposal fund. There's a transfer into the general fund from the waste disposal fund for $62,178, which was the budget that they had in their fund for those personnel. So it's revenue neutral or, to the city, but it does result in an increase of $62,000 to the general fund revenue budget, but also an increase of $62,000 to the expense. Then number 5 is to utilize some of the prior year contingency. Last year, our revenues exceeded budget, we ended up with net income for the year even after setting aside our $1 million contingency. We're using a portion of that contingency, and in addition, you'll recall that we had carried over some 2014 money to help pay for the bonuses in 2015. That was not required to be used because we had sufficient revenues last year. So this takes that $550,000 we had set aside last year and didn't use, and then an additional $312,000 from the $1 million that we had set aside as contingency last year to help us balance this adjustment. And then the 6th is just to allocate the vacancy savings and the sick and vacation payouts that we've experienced year to date. And I just want to remind you that we continue to make those adjustments on a monthly basis as we have those savings. So we will continue to adjust them, but this shows you what we've done year to date. So as we move on, let's see, in number 7, affects our street fund. We had a capital allocation from the half-cent sales tax from the state. We have used, and the board has approved all of these items, so this just transfers the budget from the capital allocation to transfers out. We transferred $1 million for vehicles and equipment for the street fund, and so that money has been expended on that equipment. We've transferred $400,000 out of the street fund to the Clinton Island Bridge project. That was grant match, got matched with, I think, $450,000 state grant to build that. And then also $500,000 has been transferred from the street fund to find a right-of-way reentry program. So that's just recognizing that transfer. It's neutral to the street fund. It's just moving it from the capital allocation to transfers out. And then finally, same as with the general fund, we had fuel expenditure reductions, and we will have the same occur in the street fund. So the summary of all those adjustments were on at the top of this. And so in the end, the net impact is a reduction to our revenue budget of $1,566,000, a reduction to the expenditure budget of $1,566,000, which will have a net impact of 0. Now, that does include carrying forward those contingencies, which we are allowed to do. And then on the street fund, we'll have a reduction of $158,000 in expenditures for the fuel.
I have a question on number 3. Scott, if you'll go back to number 3. It's really nice when something that's not part of the city can come to us and they can't make their payroll and they want us to give them funds to make their payroll. Is that what happened with First Tee? Why did it not come out of PIT money?
Director Eckhout, I believe in the past they have gone after some PIT funding. I sat down with their staff. We looked at their expenditures, their fundraising, and I feel like in order for them to, and they have a commitment, or they made a commitment that this is all of the dollars that the city is going to have to allocate. It is a program that the city has supported, and we feel like it is important because of the work they do with the kids in the Little Rock School District. So I feel very confident that this will be the last allocation from the city for First Tee.
Did we think about loaning them the money and they could pay it back with their fundraising?
No, this is again, their request was a lot more than this. And as we looked at various options for them, and they are going to increase their private contributions and their fundraising effort, but this helps them solidify the organization for the balance of the year.
I'm afraid, Mr. Moore, this is going to set up something that other companies out here, what would stop them from wanting us to pay their bills also?
Well, I think it's a little more than meeting payroll, Director Adcock. It's for their overall operations. It's for, and again, we've had our park staff to go out and help support the work that they're doing out at First Tee. And again, this request is a lot smaller than the original request as far as, but it's more than just meeting payroll. It's the overall operation of the.
You said you looked at their fundraising. I don't remember having seen anything lately on fundraising for First Tee. Do they have a person who's doing ongoing fundraising?
They don't have a development director per se. They have the executive director is responsible for that effort.
Do they have a board or some group of citizens that help oversee this?
They do have a board.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing that is important, this is a city park. The city, it's part of our park system, and that's why we've supported it the way we have in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Director Campiris, you're recognized, please.
Well, Sarah, thank you. And I think you and Bruce have done a great job in a bad situation. A couple of things before we vote on this next week. Can we get, it is amazing to me, we have, I think you said 0.5% sales tax increase net for the year, is that right?
Year to date, we actually are slightly below the same period a year ago. The fourth quarter, we have projected that we would still have 0.5% increase in the fourth quarter.
Well, that is a minuscule amount for a community that I think is thriving in many ways. And can you get us just how surrounding communities are doing, for one? And then secondly, Mayor, I think that, I don't know what will happen tomorrow as far as our House seats and Senate seats, but and I know I'm a broken record, but if you've got $1.6 million under what we projected, and we were pretty conservative on our projections last year, wouldn't you say, Sarah?
We thought we were, yes.
That we're gonna only grow our sales tax 0.5%, that I would like us to issue an invitation to whoever wins our congressional district and to our 2 senators to come and let us talk with them here about our sales tax. Now, I know that's dramatic, and I know they're not going to like it, but we're in a real problem. We've just reduced our budget by a lot of money. And, you know, it's going to have big ramifications. And part of the things that I look at, our vacancy savings, part of that, I presume, is made up by the number of officers we haven't hired. So as you look at it, it is a compounding problem. It is not, I mean, when I just look at this, those are the things, I mean, there's nothing I can do about too warm a winter and too mild a summer. I mean, $1.8 million out of our franchise tax, that's just the unluck of the draw. The citizens loved it, but it hurts us. I mean, I can't do anything about that. But I sure as hell can do something about, or try to do something about, our sales tax when our A&P collections are going nothing but up. Isn't that still right, Gene and Mayor?
That's correct.
So, I mean, I would,
About 4%.
Yeah.
A little over 4% this year.
then I would like Tom to have a formal, I mean, either you can invite him or I'll make a.
We sent a letter, all of us signed it, and I'll be happy to invite them here.
I'd like
3 out of the 6 are supportive of the,
Then I'd like to ask them to come visit with us.
Marketplace Fairness Act
and tell us
legislation.
why we as a community can't get their support when this is happening to us. And it's gotta be happening everywhere. I mean, the state until last time, at least the paper, they have had a decreased amount of taxation, correct?
Well, and their sales tax growth is below their projections.
Right, that's
The
what I'm talking
increases at the state level have primarily been income tax, not sales
Right,
tax.
but their sales tax is below where they thought they
It's
were
below
supposed to.
their projected growth, yes.
But Sarah, they don't have a cap.
That's true. And so I
explain
was going
that
to say,
again.
our
We have an
issue is
artificial cap.
twofold. And I talk about it everywhere I go, but I try to explain that, if a company buys 100 computers this year and they pool that purchase on one invoice, the city receives $37.50 on the first $2,500. Next year, they expand their business, they're doing great. They buy 1,000 computers. The city gets $37.50 on their purchase. So it makes it very difficult to grow our revenue.
And when you see the state's income coming up, not only, not just income tax, but you see their increase in sales tax, they're getting their 6.5% on the full amount of the purchase.
But again, it is not.
State legislative thing we ought to work on too, by the way.
Right, it is. If you want all the cities in Arkansas to fail, then we don't need to address this issue. And if we don't have people that want to cooperate with us, they need to tell us why and how we're going to take care of this community. Because we're 60 people short on police, right? That makes up a big part of the vacancy savings. We're at a 0.5% increase.
Just for the fourth quarter, it would be a
But your
little-
projection for the year is going to be,
Just for the fourth quarter
For
that
the
we would
fourth
have
quarter.
0.5% growth.
Okay.
Overall, it would be less than that.
okay, that's even worse.
No.
Then we need to ask people to come and explain to us how we're supposed to survive and take care of a community with that sort of encumbrances. So if we need a resolution, we'll make a resolution. I make a motion, we have a resolution asking whoever wins our representative and our senators to come.
Well, we're not in session, but I think that's a directive, Tom, to draft a resolution for us to
In a minute, we
consider.
will be.
But you can, yeah, we will. You can do it in a minute if you want to, but
Bill.
I think Tom knows to get us a resolution. Okay, are there other questions either for Sarah or on the budget adjustment? Director Fortson, you're next, please.
Well, I think Director Computer has made most of the points obvious that I was going to bring up. I do have one question, Sarah. Obviously, if sales tax collections are down for the operating portion, they're down the same percentage for the capital portion. At some point in time, and I know you don't have it on the tip of your tongue, it'd be good to have a comparison of how we stand after this many years with what our original projections were for those capital funds. And the second thing, just to reinforce what Director Compuris said, I read from a Wall Street Journal article here about a month ago that FedEx was anticipating, a 29% increase in business during the holiday season this year, and I'm sure UPS will be about the same, and that tells you where a whole lot of our sales tax revenue is gone. That's all.
Now, there's no question that if you look at the increase in internet sales over the last several years, they skyrocket. And yet we are having a hard time in Congress getting that legislation through. There's some thought that it will be done in the lame duck session. So that's going to come up here in a couple days. So we'll see whether or not there's any real movement in Congress or not. But in light of that, certainly I think whether we have a formal motion or not here in a minute during our session, or whether we directive is enough, we'll have a resolution asking our two senators and our congressman to come and visit with us about this and elaborate on how we're going to fund the city when we've got these artificial constraints put on us, either through internet sales or through obviously a ceiling that is created in the state. I've talked about the fact maybe we could get the ceiling raised, we could double it. Certainly getting our tax on a penny and a half on the first $5,000 seems to me to be extraordinarily reasonable. We've tried that before without any type of success, but certainly that doesn't mean we shouldn't try again. So hopefully we can get some legislators to look at that as well. Okay, more on the budget. Director Wright?
So, Mayor, am I understanding, are we going to have a motion in our reconvene meeting?
I think the Director Compuris is going to make that motion.
Okay, the reason I'll support the motion, but the leadership that we have doesn't like government, so they want as little government as possible. So why would they help us? And that's what they say when I watch them.
Well,
I'm just saying.
okay, Director Adcock, on this issue or another issue?
18.
Okay, Mr. Moore, if you would like to elaborate on item 18, please. All right, Mr. Carpenter.
Director Adcock, this issue's come before the board before. There was litigation in the past. The litigation has been settled. Timex is willing to maintain the indemnity agreement for the city I don't know how there could be a lawsuit if you've settled, but in the outlier possibility that there would be, they would be willing to indemnify the city. So this will impose the requirements on groundwater in certain areas around the Little Rock Airport that we've already imposed within the Little Rock Airport to help overcome the environmental damage that was done by Timex.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we can now move on to items 19 and 20. Director Wyrick.
So that only impacts the Little Rock area around the airport and within the airport. It
Just a
doesn't
very
impact any other part of the city of Little Rock. Okay.
You can still dig a well at your place.
Well, I don't want a well, but I know people, some of my neighbors have them and they use them, so just wanted to make sure they would not be impacted. Thank you.
Director Wright is next, please.
I'd like a presentation on the item 20.
And I think Director Adcock wanted one on 19 too, so I'm not sure.
Tony will do both of them. Tony?
If Tony is going to present, okay, good.
19 and 20?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board, item 19 is an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of a request to rezone property located at the northwest corner of West Markham and North Monroe. The request is to rezone the property from O3 General Office and C3 General Commercial to PCD to allow a restaurant with drive-through service. Again, this is on appeal. The Planning Commission voted 5 ayes and 5 noes. The item, because of that vote, was denied, and the applicant has appealed it. Staff is recommending denial of the proposed PCD. There was opposition at the Planning Commission meeting. Those that spoke raised concerns with traffic, congestion, parking, impact on the neighborhood. One individual expressed this location as a primary entrance into the neighborhood that would be disrupted with this kind of use there. Staff is concerned about the intensity of this use. There's residential directly across the street. There is a single-family residence to the north. Now, that particular lot is zoned O1, which is quiet office. The land use plan along here does recommend office for this property in a large section of West Markham.
Is that Wendy's next door to this?
Director, yes, that's Wendy's directly to the west.
And these are single-family houses over to the right?
Yes, across Monroe, those are all single-family.
By the city to change this, and they have met all those requests, is that true?
We met with the applicant, suggested some possible designs to consider. They did those. But again, the design did not change the use of the property, and that's what we feel is an issue, the intensity of that use.
Okay. And how many parking places are they required to have?
Director Adcock, this falls within the Midtown Design Overlay District. And with that, you can, it's a 50% reduction, so they're proposing 13, and that's what's required.
13 parking places?
Yes.
How many seats is in this restaurant?
I don't know how many seats. The building is close to 2,800 square feet.
And what was the staff's reason for denial on this?
Again, the intensity of the use and potential impact on the surrounding single-family properties.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Tony, if you'd move to item 20, please.
Okay. Item 20, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. Item 20 is also on your agenda as an appeal, but this is appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of a conditional use permit for a conditioned mini storage facility located at 102 South Rodney Parham. This is very close to the intersection of Rodney Parham and West Markham. A record objector did file this appeal, and that's why it's before you. Again, the property is zoned C3 General Commercial. Mini storage is allowed as a conditional use, and that's what was filed, went through the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission voted 8 ayes and 1 no, approving the conditional use permit. Staff's recommended approval of the conditional use permit and is recommending denial of the resolution because the resolution is to rescind the Planning Commission's action approving the conditional use permit.
Tony, I haven't seen the letter from the neighborhood. I did get a call from them, and they had quite a few reasons that they objected to this. I'm looking at the sketch here. Is this an egress through the neighborhood?
Director Wright, no. I mean, if, Mr. Carter, if we can go to the zoning map. The primary entrance is on Rodney Parham, which is on the north side. And then there's Sunnymead Drive on the east side, and there's an existing driveway that will be utilized by this project as a secondary access. But you can see that people coming off of Rodney Parham onto Sunnymead then will not be going through the neighborhood.
So there are no houses on Sunnymead?
There are houses, but the first two south of this driveway on Sunnymead, those are Zone C3 General Commercial. But again, the driveway's north of them. So they will not, they'll be going adjacent to one of the houses to enter into the facility.
Well, they were virulently objective to this. So I'm sure they'll be in attendance so we can all hear what the objections are a little bit more in depth. Okay, thank you.
Director Adcock, you're recognized, please.
Mr. Moore, I have some questions of Public Works on this, please.
Mr. Honeywell?
Give Tony a break. John, in talking to the neighborhood people, there's lots of drainage problems in this area. And there has been for several years with those large concrete drainage ditches and everything. Have you studied this?
Yes, ma'am. We've actually already done a drainage improvement project at this location. The two houses that we were referring to a minute ago, we did a pretty extensive project there to try to alleviate any of the drainage issues that were occurring there. There are some locations there that it's going to be very, very, very difficult to correct because of the elevation of the existing homes compared to the surrounding streets and drainage ways that impact how we can drain them.
What's all these storage buildings going to do to that problem?
They will have detention requirements. That was an existing developed property prior. That was the old Mexico Chiquito. So by them developing this, there won't be major changes from how the amount of water that's coming off that site as to what was previously occurring. And that wasn't the issue that was creating drainage, was not necessarily because of the development of this property.
Well, the neighbors are afraid that that's one of the problems, that it's going to cause more drainage problems.
It shouldn't change the quantity of water that's coming off of that site from the previously developed to what they're proposing here.
When help me with this, because one restaurant's sitting on a piece of property, and now you've got how many? And some of these buildings are 2 stories, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And how does that keep it from having less water?
Well, it was completely developed with parking lots and everything else, so it was already in an impervious state. So it's still going to be impervious. The number of stories you have doesn't impact the amount of water that runs off. It's that surface area, if you look at it from the top, it's wherever that area is that's impervious or impervious impacts how much water, how quickly that water drains off of the property.
Okay, and you have gone out and looked at this?
Yes, ma'am, we've been out at that site several times before in the past. Not in conjunction with this particular development, but our staff is very familiar with the location.
I'm sure they're familiar with the location, but I'm wondering if they're familiar with all the buildings that's going to be on this property.
It's one building.
One building?
Yes, ma'am.
But how many stories?
That I don't know.
3 stories? That looks a lot bigger than one restaurant.
But once again, the existing ground, even around whatever building, whether the restaurant was smaller or larger, parking lots are impervious the same way that the building roof is impervious. So with it all being impervious previously with parking lot and restaurant, if the building's now bigger and the parking lot's smaller, you still have the same amount of impervious area on the ground. So that's why there's not a measurable difference in the amount of runoff that's occurring.
Okay. And you've seen the letter from Ms. Crane?
Is that
Terry Crane?
one of the people that had an issue with this development? No, I have not personally.
I think that
I'll have
she's
to ask
probably
staff.
the person who filed for the appeal.
Okay. I have not seen that, but I'll have to check with my staff to see.
Okay, if you would check with Tony too, and if he has a
Certainly.
copy of it, if you'd look at it before
Great,
next
yeah,
week.
definitely will.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we can now move on to item 21, which is the August financial report.
Sarah's going to hit the highlights since we've sort of talked about a lot of it with the budget adjustment.
Okay, on the first slide through the end of August, which this includes our revenue, our sales tax revenue that we collected in October for the month of August. We're at 65.58% of our annual budget. A simple 8/12 would be 66.67%, and this compares to 67.83% the same period a year ago. So we had collected at a better rate last year. You'll recall last year our sales tax revenues were better. On the next slide, you'll see that in dollars, our revenues are $126 million. We're $2.1 million below budget and $200,000 less than the same period a year ago. On the next slide, you see by category where this is. Now, the negative in general property tax, that's really due to the timing of the property tax. We've actually collected 58% of the property tax budget. Typically, we collect 50 to 60% in the last quarter of the year. So we're actually a little bit ahead here. But as I mentioned, the impact of our Act 9 revenues, which happens at the end of the year, that decline is going to be the reason for that adjustment. We're going to talk about sales tax in detail in a moment. Our licenses and permits, we have actually collected 100% of the business license portion already this year. Our permits are exceeding budget by about 12%, and those favorable variances were included in the budget amendment we just discussed. Our intergovernmental revenues, that's the total for the year. It was received in July. That number is known. The budget amendment takes us to that amount. Our charges for services, the negative there is a combination of the timing of the debt service contribution we make at the first of the year. That makes up about $436,000 of that. That will be on budget at the end of the year, that portion, but it also includes $132,000 negative associated with War Memorial Golf because it was closed for 3 months for the resurfacing of the greens. Fines and fees are down. They're below budget, $239,000. Part of that has to do with the timing of our year-end accruals and the reversal of those at the first of the year. But there are a couple of other things going on here. The more people are taking the service as opposed to paying the fine. The community service option, and then also the minimum amount on a time payment has been reduced from $100 to $50. So when they're paying on a time-based, they can now stretch that over a longer time. So that's negatively impacted our revenues as well. The budget amendment includes a reduction of $370,000 for the year in our fines and fees. Utility franchise fees I'm going to talk about in detail, but that negative there is primarily our gas and our electric franchise fees. The negative in the miscellaneous category is that category has to do with a couple of things, one of which is workers' comp rebate or refunds. When we have to pay out excess workers' comp premiums, we get a refund from our self-insurance, our excess policy. And those have been less this year, which is a good thing. It means we're not paying out as many workers' comp claims, but that revenue is lower as well. So on the next slide, we just see that comparison to the same period a year ago. So here you see where our property taxes to date are actually ahead of where we were a year ago. And just a reminder, $641,000 of that favorable variance is associated with the excess commissions on the property tax collections for 2015 that we got too late to recognize with our 2015 revenues. $257,000 of that is dedicated to the police and fire pension trust funds and gets deposited, passed through directly to those. Our sales tax is actually less than the same period a year ago. And then the big item here is our utility franchise fees. Again, the charges for services, that's mainly a timing issue. We had just a timing issue on collection of our airport fees for police and fire, but that's now been caught up, so there's no long-term issue there with charges for services other than War Memorial, which we've already discussed. So we'll move on to the sales tax slide. You can see that for the month of October collections for August sales, the city portion of counties, or the city sales tax actually increased 0.24%. The county portion was down 1.86%. Blended, we had a decline of 0.62%. Year-to-date, our sales tax are 2.39% below budget and 0.25% below the same period a year ago. On the next slide, you just see that same information that we just discussed. So I'll move on to the next. And this is our year-to-date through October, and this is collection through our August sales. Our sales tax is down $1,584,568 below our budget. That's 2.39% less than budget and 0.25% less than the same period a year ago. Our budgeted growth was 2.2%, and we're just slightly less than where we were the same period a year ago. So if you look at the last 12 months, the revenue has grown 1.11%. On the next slide, this is the revenue provided by the new 1 penny tax, and the 1 cent tax has generated $220 million life to date. $138 million has supported operations. $83.2 million has been dedicated to capital projects. The item highlighted in yellow there is the comparative information on the 3/8 cent tax. You'll recall last year we reimbursed the airport for tax on aviation fuel, and so this is just a comparison to that payback, that one-time return. But even with that, we're at 0.1% growth this year on our local sales tax. On the next slide, we're talking about our electric franchise fees. We had projected originally 2.9% growth based on information that we had received from the utility at the beginning of the year, but usage is down 4.24%. Our revenue is down 5.6%. Through August, our year-to-date revenues are $791,000 below budget and $536,000 below the same period a year ago. We have projected kind of this same trend through the end of the year, and that went into our budget amendment. On the next slide, our gas franchise fees are down just over 29% from the same period a year ago. And that's due primarily to very low natural gas prices. Now, there was an article in the paper just last week that they anticipate that to increase, I think it said 19%, beginning the 1st of November. So we did factor in that this rate of decline would be less for the fourth quarter of the year. But even so, our reduction of franchise fees overall is $1.8 million. But this is below budget, $564,000. Just the gas portion. Okay, on the next slide, we have our general fund expenditures. We had expended 66.35% of our budget. Again, 8/12 would be 66.67, so we're just a little bit below that, but we're ahead of where we were the same period a year ago. On the next slide, we've expended $125,418,000 compared to a budget of $126,052. So we're $602,000 below budget. And we're about $6.4 million above the same period a year ago. Part of that is our debt service payments on the notes that we've taken out to accelerate the 3/8 cent projects. On the next slide, you'll see the categories. The unfavorable variance in general administration is exactly what I just mentioned. It's debt service. $2 million of the unfavorable variance, so more than that, $1.4 million, is just associated with the timing of our budgeted debt service payments. That's partially offset by a favorable variance due to the timing of our actuarially determined pension and OPEB, other post-employment benefits that happens at the end of the year. So otherwise, general administration is on budget. As you go down, golf, about 64% of the unfavorable variance there is due to accelerated contributions to First Tee. In addition, their personnel cost is over budget by about $64,000. but 35,000 of that was vacation sick payouts that, in our budget amendment that we just adopted, that gets reclassified from the budget and general government and will help offset part of that variance. Other variances are just due to the timing of expenditures as they ramp up for their busiest season of the year, and then they slack off in the fourth quarter. On the zoo, the unfavorable variance there, personnel cost is about 75,000 of that. Their supplies are about 41,000 above budget, and contracts are about 61,000 above budget. And again, that's due to the timing of part-time personnel, events for their, some of their special things that happen in the summer and the early fall, and then their expenses also slack off in the fourth quarter of the year. So we're anticipating that they will be in line with budget at the end of the year. The fire department, about 575,000 of their unfavorable variance is associated with personnel cost, including the timing of clothing and EMT allowances, overtime payments, and holiday premium. Their other expenses are below budget by 168,000, which helps to offset that. On the police department, the favorable variance there, about 948,000 of that is just due to the timing of the pass-through pension contributions. Everything that is collected that's dedicated to the pension will be passed through, but the revenues don't come in ratably throughout the year because one of that is the 1 mil property tax levy. So we contribute as that's collected. And since the biggest portion of that comes in the fourth quarter, that's when the bigger contribution to lot fee for that closed plan happens. So that will remove almost $1 million worth of that variance. 877,000 of that variance is due to the vacant positions, excess vacant positions. And then finally, our vacancy savings. We have, and we can go ahead and look at that on the next slide. We had originally budgeted $6 million for the year. As of August 26th, we were at $5.4 million, basically, which is why we were able to increase that vacancy amount in order to help balance our amendment just a moment ago. There are 144 budgeted positions that are unfilled in the general fund, and as you well know, about 56 of those were police positions. And then we adjusted up our vacation sick payout in the budget amendment, and that's because for retiring or severing employees, we've already paid out $1,124,000 year-to-date for those payouts. And then on the next slide, you'll just see our trend in vacant positions. And that concludes the August financial report.
Vice Mayor Hines, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Sarah, quick question on our franchise fees, and this is something I've seen happen with our federal gasoline taxes. We constantly strive for more energy efficient furnaces, air conditioning, much like we've done with cars. We bet the bank on a consumption tax that through our policy has reduced the amount of consumption in the market. So do we get any advice or guidance from Entergy or our gas company as to what the impact's going to be? Do they? Because they even have their own programs where they're trying to reduce energy consumption from their retail customers, the homeowners. So that's my question.
We do work very, very closely with them in forecasting our revenues. We work with them. They actually provide our projections. They were just wrong this last year.
Right, and I know weather has a big impact.
Weather does have a lot to do with it, but, it is a declining source because of efficiencies, like you mentioned.
And because I know they push a big program where they'll come out and put this, I guess, call it a regulator on your air conditioner unit where they can basically throttle down your electric usage during peak times in the summer. So I don't know how much of that they deployed, but in my house, I've got those. I bought one of my thermostats went out, and I bought one of those fancy Nest thermostats that it knows when I'm home, knows when I'm not, turns the air up, turns it down. It's a pretty cool deal, some of the technology that's out there. So I was just curious as to, because what we see is a continued decrease in usage, which some of that's weather related, but I was just curious to see what impact some of this energy conservation
Well,
stuff has.
the water too, is another area where efficiency has reduced our revenue, usage of water. And, it's a combination. It affects both our franchise fees and our sales tax revenues.
Thank you.
Sarah, I noticed in one of the pages there that you mentioned that there was $433,800 and some odd dollars at the Information Technology Department.
Favorable variance.
Favorable variance. Would you explain what that's about?
Yes, part of that is timing, and hold on, I've got that information. Hold on. Okay, and I don't have it on this one, but part of the variance there, first of all, their maintenance contracts, they've got some expenditures that are gonna happen in the latter quarter of the year that have not come through yet. Also, they had a budget for capital that is going into this voice over internet protocol phone system that we're replacing. And so that money has been reserved too for that, which is in the process right now of being rolled out. So that's a fourth quarter expense as well. So they should not have that favorable variance at the end of the year. They're expending those dollars as they get them.
And I know that we've authorized the filling of police officer vacancies, but if we did that, if it was possible to do that, what would that do to your vacancy savings?
If we filled 100% of our vacant positions, we would not be able to meet our budget.
Okay. So as we discuss the issue desperately of how we get those vacancies filled, we're going to have to look at how we deal with that vacancy savings issue as well.
Exactly.
But I want to point out, because I don't want somebody to think that we're not filling positions to balance our budget. I mean, we got 144 vacancies now, and a majority, a good portion of those are in the police department. But Sarah's comment is if we filled all of 144, we would really be in a difficult position as far as balancing the budget.
That's correct. They're obviously the priority hire.
Director Campiris.
And please understand, I wasn't thinking that anybody was not doing that. I was just pointing out that part of the vacancy savings was the fact that we're having problems getting recruits and that we need to work on that. I think you and Bruce and the chief are working as hard as you can to fill those spaces. But the fact is, we use that to balance the budget for this year. And it's just a fact. I mean, I'm not impugning anybody on that. It's just a fact that we have to know we're living with.
And I appreciate that, Director Pierce. And I will tell you, during my tenure here, we're going to have 25 to 30 vacancies in the police department, just from terminations, from retirements, from resignations. In fact, over the last 5 years, just pretty much there's the retirements, and then there's a resignation factor that's pretty significant too. So you're right. I appreciate the chief and his staff are doing everything they can to get those classes filled.
Well, I mean, my point was more that we have to do something about our sales tax and what we're collecting and how we're doing it, and that's the point. I mean, it's not. I think what you and Sarah are doing at the budget is exactly fiscally responsible of what we need to be doing. And there's no, we are where we are. It's not our fault that the utilities can't tell us, missed it by $1.8 million how much we were going to get. I mean, that's a small error in their projections. But I do know that the sales tax was happening there.
Well, and Sarah, on the franchise estimates, it seems like consistently over the last few years, and I hesitate to say how many, that there's been serious variances between their estimates and what actuality is.
Well, we actually last year we amended our energy revenues up because they had estimated. And so, I mean, part of it too, they have those riders for storm recovery fees, and so things are constantly moving. And, you know, their objective is, of course, to cover their costs. They go before the Public Service Commission, you know, for rate adjustments. They're never 100% sure what they're going to get and what they're not. So they've got estimates and the factors that they provide us, and, you know, we go on the best information we have available. And, you know.
Well, I know we rely on them, so yeah, I mean, thank you. And I'm certainly, as we deal with the issue of how to fill vacancies, looking for increased revenue that actually, I think, as Director Caberas has mentioned numerous times, and the mayor as well, you know, the use tax that is part of this whole marketplace fairness issue is a tax that is owed that is generally not paid by citizens. And the whole concept is to have an equal, and even an equal playing field. And unfortunately, with the internet sales, it's very unequal, and it hurts us as much as it hurts Main Street, Arkansas, the bricks and mortar businesses that we have. And there's really no excuse for why Congress hadn't done something about that, in my opinion. So hopefully we'll get something done in this lame duck session. And as I mentioned, we'll invite our legislators to come visit with us and give us an update on that and whether they support it or not. Okay, excuse me, that concludes our agenda. We can now move into our recess meeting. Let me go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to read the roll.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Webb, Director Gazort, Director Wright, Director Wyrick, Director Campuris, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Hines, Mayor Stodler.
Here. Okay, we've got 5 items that are on second reading. Is there a motion for second reading, please? There's a motion and a second to move these items to second reading. All in favor indicate, to suspend the rules and put these on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to accept the Pulaski County Special School District annexation to add certain lands to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive bidding and to authorize the city manager to execute enhancement number 1 to the master agreement for Motorola hosting services with Motorola Solutions Incorporated in amount of $217,782 to add the Premier One CSE mobile code enforcement to the master agreement, and for the purposes, an ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive bidding and to authorize the city manager to issue a purchase order to Motorola Solutions Incorporated in an amount of $54,834.06 for the purchase of 12 mobile radios for the Little Rock Police Department, and for the purposes, an ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive bids and to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Cruise Uniform and Equipment in an amount not to exceed $298,856.20 for the purchase of bulletproof vests and associated equipment, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes, an ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive bids and to authorize the city manager to enter into agreement with Grace Communications Company in the amount of $572,154.25 for a maintenance agreement for the Motorola Emergency Communication System, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes, second reading.
Suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to accept Pulaski County Special School District annexation to add certain lands to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. An ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive bidding and to authorize the city manager to execute enhancement number 1 to the master agreement for Motorola hosting services with Motorola Solutions Incorporated in an amount of $217,782 to add the Premier One CSE mobile code enforcement to the master agreement. An ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive bidding and to authorize the city manager to issue a purchase order to Motorola Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $54,834.06 for the purchase of 12 mobile radios for the Little Rock Police Department. An ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive bids and to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Cruise Uniform and Equipment in an amount not to exceed $298,856.20 for the purchase of bulletproof vests and associated equipment, to declare an emergency, an ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive bids and to authorize the city manager to enter into agreement with Grace Communications Company in the amount of $572,154.25 for a maintenance agreement for the Motorola Emergency Communication System, to declare an emergency, third and final reading.
Okay, we've had the three readings. It doesn't appear anyone has any discussion on these items. So let me call for a vote. All in favor of the passage of these five ordinances indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ordinances have passed. And on the emergency clause for item 4, all in favor of the emergency clause indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause is passed. And on the emergency clause for ordinance number 5, all in favor of the emergency clause indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause is also passed. I think we've got two directors that wish to speak. Director Wright's first, and then Director Compiers.
Now, we're done with this, right? Because mine is on something different.
We are on any new business, new items that might come before us, such as, I think, Director Compiers' motion on a resolution.
We can do his, and then I can ask my question, because mine is a follow-up to things that we had asked for previously.
Okay, Director Compiers.
I'd like to make a motion that between now and the end of this year, we ask whoever our representative and our two senators to come and meet with us to discuss the issue of internet sales.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The motion is passed, and we'll have a resolution for us to review. Mr. Carpenter, did you do it as a resolution? Okay. I thought you might want to add some reasoning on why it's important. That's the reason why I mentioned that.
Ready for next week?
If Senator Boozman won't come, do you want me to ask Connor Eldridge?
That's probably not germane to the discussion. Director Wright.
Okay, I have two items. Mr. Carpenter, we had asked for, I guess, a resolution regarding the MLK holiday. Where are we with that?
Director Wright, the state has, by statute, declared that a holiday, and by another statute has declared it a patriotic holiday, and by a third statute has said that local governments have nothing to do with holidays, that those are matters of state concern. So I'm kind of in a limbo. Do you just want something to say, please change this to our state General Assembly delegation? Is that what you want?
I believe that's what we asked, that we send a resolution stating that we would be in support of this.
Okay.
Because that's all we can do. You had said that previously, that nothing we do is binding on them.
Right, that's what I thought, but that is in fact what it is. But then I thought that there were some that wanted to actually move to just abolish the holiday as far as the city was concerned. Okay.
Think so. Then the second question I had was for Mr. Moore. Back in the summer, I believe, or late spring, you came before us with I believe it was asking for authorization to enter into an agreement with, I believe, Comcast about internet on the site of the new community center. And my understanding was that was going to take care of our internet accessibility problems there, because the site would now be fully capable. Is that the case? What did you find out on that?
I haven't, came up over the weekend. The issue is not, we have what I would consider standard internet capacity at the center. just like all our other centers. The issue is the radio station and what those needs are. So to answer your question, yes, we've got the same service that we have to all of our centers.
Well, I was there this morning and there's no internet.
Well, it's my understanding, and I don't know.
We
this
couldn't
is
get on
first-
the internet, I'll
yeah.
put it like that.
Okay, but they're supposed to have internet service. It's just an issue of the capacity with the radio. This is the first I've heard that you couldn't get on the internet today.
No, we use the hotspot, individual, on the phone.
I'll follow up on that.
Okay. But we do have, standard is not high speed. You don't know?
As I tell them, we got a new building, we ought to put the best that's
Exactly.
available, and so.
Well, that's why I'm asking these questions, because I thought this would automatically be done when we gave that authorization. And I remember what's his name, Randy Foshi? I asked that question, is this going to take care of the problems that we've had in the past? And he assured me that it would. So,
We're following up.
all right.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Moore, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I asked you about Gaines Street. Would you follow up on that for me?
I thought
We have north of Gaines that was paved, and the people that's south of Gaines, they are complaining like all get out.
I thought I had sent you a memo, but I'll follow up on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it was to everybody. I sent it to you Friday.
You sent everybody? See, everybody didn't ask. That's a personal request.
No, Director Hendricks, I have never, ever changed the way I operate this. If it comes up in the board meeting, which it did, then.
Do it again, I threw it away. Every time it didn't come to me personally about some stuff.
But if it comes up in a board meeting, I do send it to everyone, so, but it's right here.
You want me to email it so it'll be personal? I'll take it.
There you go.
I hope it's good.
Maybe, let me have it back.
Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Carpenter, where are we on our ordinance for parking in yards, the new and improved version?
Director Warwick, I really don't know today. I've got a trial coming up a week from Wednesday, and it's pretty much where I've been focused.
Okay. I thought we were expecting it the end of October, and the end of October is come
Has
and
come and
gone. We've
gone.
had Halloween, and so we're moving into Turkey Day, so I was just following up with you. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. We're in adjournment.